Hi and good morning. We are just getting started here today. I hope that everyone will start joining us. My name is Joanna Pearlstein. I'm an editor at the New York Times opinion section. And I'm here today to talk with Alicia Lombardini, who wrote a piece for the New York Times opinion section about what it's like to do IVF after 40 without a partner. So Alicia is just joining us now. Hold on one second. Good morning, everyone. Thanks to everybody who's joining us. Seeing so many people. Alicia's just joining. Alicia.
Hi.
Hi, how are
How
you?
are you?
I'm good, thanks. Opinion section. Sorry, I'm trying to be very organized. It's going very well. We'll see if this works. Sorry. That's not working. Okay, anyway, let's just get started. That's great. Anyway, thanks to everybody for joining us. Again, my name is Joanna Pearlstein. I'm really pleased to be joined today by Alicia Lombardini. Alicia is a stylist and who works in New York City, and she wrote an essay for the New York Times opinion section about her experience doing IVF after 40 without a partner. And so, Alicia, maybe you could just kind of get started and tell us a little bit about how you came to be wanting to become a parent and sort of your journey to parenthood and how you chose to take the path that you eventually decided to take.
Well, I think that I had some disappointments in relationships, and that turned into understanding that, obviously as a woman, we're combating time. And I think at a certain point, I realized that no matter what would happen with a relationship down the road, I knew I wanted to have a child. And I didn't necessarily want to wait to meet someone to create my family. And I found that actually there was a lot of relief in doing that, because I kind of took away that burden from something that was in the future, and I created it for myself. I wasn't waiting for someone else to, complete my story. I decided to move forward and start looking into IVF. And it was a scary prospect because I had no idea what I was, up against.
So I want to talk a little bit about IVF, but I'm wondering I wonder if you could sort of describe like what you saw your options in terms of becoming a parent when you decided to do so on your own. Like you could have a child biologically, you could potentially pursue foster adopt or adoption. Like how did you sort of view your options and what did you think when you considered each of them?
Well, when I was younger, I thought to myself, I actually didn't want to have my own biological children, because I thought that there are enough children out there and that I should adopt if I were going to have children. And I found that the landscape for doing such a thing was even more complicated, especially in the United States. To adopt a child is actually extremely difficult and complicated unless you're adopting from a country, in more likely in Africa. And I think that, that goes to, you have to create an environment that mirrors that child's life. And I think it's so important when you're adopting children of other ethnicities or countries that you are able to provide some sort of cultural landscape for them. And in a lot of ways, as a single parent, I think that becomes an even greater challenge. So the idea of adoption, just in the end, because A, it's complicated, and B, I mean, at my age even, you get turned down mostly. So it's not something that it's not like you can just go out there and, oh, yes, I'm going to adopt. You know what I mean? It's not so easy. I did look into it. And then in terms of fostering, I think that brings its own heartache and complications as well, because there's no guarantee when you do fostering that you'll end up with that child. Because as I've seen with a close friend of mine, she's fostering a young girl, and in the end, she doesn't know if she'll be able to adopt this child in the end, because there is this desire within the system of fostering that the child ends up going back to their birth parents or mother. You know what I mean? So it's not such a simple equation.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna, you know, and that led me to decide, you know, that IVF really was the way I, you know, having my own biological child was the way I wanted to go.
Mm-hmm. And I was just going to say that, you know, regardless of whether you did IVF or foster adopt or adopt, all of those options are not like you know, go in and immediately get a child, right? They're all very time consuming, right? I know people who've
100%.
waited to adopt a child for many, many years before finally welcoming a child into their home.
It's oftentimes, because I've seen it happen with other friends who, you know, they thought they were going to get a child and at the last minute it was pulled back from them, and you know that the you know the biological mother changes her mind, or you know, or if you're doing it in a different country, you know, I've seen also the process that I have two friends that adopted children in Africa, and you know, I saw the process that they had to go through, and it's excruciating. It's not an easy system.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
And it comes with its own challenges. It's not, none of, each of these options they all pose a big challenge to an individual. And then when you're talking, and that's if you're in a couple, and then when you're doing it on your own, it's even more challenging.
Mm-hmm. So you decide to do IVF, and then you're sort of in the process of kind of essentially shopping for a clinic, right? Can you kind of describe, I mean,
no, I was thinking you meant shopping for the sperm.
Well, no, actually, I was just interested in, like, you can talk about that too, but I was interested, like, you have to find a place that will come, you have to find a doctor, right? And you wrote about that a little bit in your piece.
I did. I mean, I visited with a few different clinics in New York, and I found them to be mostly very cold and disheartening. You felt like a number. And I met this one doctor, her name is Dr. Luke, and she just, I don't know, I just felt a really strong connection to her, and she seemed to really understand where I was coming from, and there was an immediate connection to her, and I felt like there was empathy, which I hadn't felt before. Mm. And, you know, getting to her actually took a long process because it's so expensive in the US, and I really couldn't afford the cost. So I started looking elsewhere, and I looked in Europe, and I looked in, well, mostly Europe, but I'm French. I'm half French. So I looked in France and Paris, and it's illegal. It's illegal to do IVF as a single woman, or if you're in a homosexual couple, if you're in a lesbian couple, it's completely illegal, because it still remains at its essence and its core a Catholic country, which is so backwards to me. There's so little about it that is supportive to women, to be honest. And it was very, very disappointing, and I found it to be frustrating. So then I went to looking in Denmark, because I heard some great things with their clinics there, and I have friends who live there, very dear friends, who had offered that I could come live there with them. And that too became a problem, because they wouldn't accept me because of my age, and when they looked at the health, I guess, of my levels. So they basically refused me. Yeah.
Wow. I just want to take a moment to reintroduce you here for some of the people who are just joining us. Good afternoon, or good morning, or good evening, wherever you are. I see somebody from India, so hello from India and Israel. I'm in California, and so we're really all over the place today. My name is Joanna Pearlstein. I'm an editor at the New York Times Opinion section, and I'm pleased today to be speaking with Alicia Lombardini, who wrote an essay about her experience doing IVF after age 40 as a single woman, and we're talking today about her experience doing IVF without a partner. Going back to the sort of question of, like, success rates, right? So, you know, it's a thing that women hear all the time, right? You have to have a baby by age 35. After age 35, your fertility falls off a cliff. I would just want to say, like, that's not the case for everybody. People's bodies are different. There isn't some magical thing that happens when you turn 30 on you. The day that you wake up after your 35th birthday, it's not like your fertility like falls off a cliff, right?
No.
It's different for everybody.
Yeah, 100% is different for
it's different for everybody. I think actually, as your experience really suggests, which we'll get to, but nonetheless, it is generally the case that women in their 40s have lower success rates with IVF than women maybe in their 20s, right? So can you tell a little bit, you wrote about this a little bit in your piece where they said like, well, you had X% chance. Like, what did you sort of experience and what did you feel like your chances were when you began this process?
Oh, I mean, I was pretty devastated to learn what my chances were. And I thought, you know, I kept asking, are you sure? Are you sure? Like, I just don't feel that like my body is, you know, falling apart and old. And I really didn't understand why why my chances were so low, because I didn't feel old. And I think that's what's so hard, is because our eggs age at a certain rate. And even if we're in great shape or healthy, yeah, that's, you know, that's still aging. That said, and yes, I know that I'm an exception, because a lot of people, when they read my piece, they assumed that I used a donor egg. And actually, I used my own egg. It was just that, you know, I got lucky, I guess. I don't know. I really, you know, I'm not a doctor. I can't explain, you know, the inner workings, but all I do know is that I really wanted to give it a shot. And even though the percentages were so low, I still wanted to try. I was determined to try, because there was something inside of me was saying that it might work. I don't know. And I was just trusting my instinct. And I feel like so often, you know, we go against what our inner voices say because we're listening to everybody else talk. You know, it's all the noise around us. And I was able to just shut that out and really listen to my inner voice and know that this was the path I wanted to take.
I just actually wanted to explain the issue of donor egg, because I realized that not everybody who's participating may be familiar with that. My understanding of that, and you should interrupt me at any time here, is that, you know, in general, the quality of a woman's eggs decline as she ages. And sometimes when a woman's having difficulty getting pregnant with her own eggs, she will get a donor egg, often, but not always, from someone who is younger or just has, you know, is an egg donor, and will use that to become a parent, because her own eggs are not of sufficient quality.
That's correct.
Okay, great. Can you talk a little bit about like the IVF process? Like when you do IVF, like there's medications, there's procedures, like, and one thing that you mentioned in the piece is the cost. I think you've referred to it as the cost of a cycle, right? Which you said was about $30,000, but like, it's not like you pay and then you get a baby. It's like you pay and you try for one cycle of egg retrieval, an egg transfer, or embryo transfer. Like you try it multiple times and pay multiple times. Just describe for everyone like a little bit about like the physical toll that this kind of process takes or requires.
Well, the way that I did it was that we did egg retrievals at first. So we did multiple egg retrievals, which meant that I was taking hormones, I was doing injections, I was trying to create an environment in my, I guess, my womb, my ovaries, that would kind of for that cycle create the most amount of eggs possible to be retrieved. And you know, that means you're going in for bi-weekly, sometimes 3 times a week, screenings, where they do a sonogram and you do blood work. So you're basically, you just kind of put it into your schedule, and it's every week on a regular basis. You're just going into the clinic, you know, you're in and you're out, and it's like, oh, it's like you're going to the gym, or you're going to the dry cleaners, or I don't know. It's just like, it just became part of like my regular schedule, that was part of it. And I would just go in, do the monitoring and the blood work and see where I was. And then they would tell me, okay, come back in 2 days or come back in 3 days. And that's how it proceeded, until it seemed like I was in good shape, where they saw like, okay, you look like you've got a good amount of eggs here. I think we should harvest them, you know, this cycle. And then it goes into this process of injections and pills and things like that, that you're adding to your, you know, the whole system. And once those eggs were retrieved, then they're studied for a certain amount of days in a petri dish, and then you see how many survive. They, my first cycle, we watched them until day 3. I lost all but one egg. And that one egg was then fertilized and turned into an embryo, and then it was frozen. And some people do fresh transfers. That means that they go in that same cycle, they'll have that embryo put back inside of them into their uterus. We decided to keep going with another cycle of egg retrieval, because having one egg, only one embryo, seemed really despairing. So we did it again, and the next cycle was even better. We got, I think at the time we got like 13 eggs that were viable. But, and then we also, so then we did it until day 5, which was until we froze them. I'm sorry, they were, gets a little confusing, but they were, the sperm was injected, and then they were embryos. Then we waited until day 5 to freeze them. And by day 5, I think we had lost again, all but one. And that one egg we did PGS testing on, which is more invasive genetic testing to see the health of the embryo. And that was frozen at day 5. And then we waited to see like what my next option was. And at that point I decided, okay, let's try with the first egg to put it back in. And that's called a frozen transfer.
Because the embryo was frozen and then transferred to your uterus, right?
Yes, exactly. And in between all that, I actually had to have polyps removed from my uterus. So that was a whole other thing that got added in there. So
one person mentioned in the comments that as we age, all of us, men and women, I should say, the risk of having a child with special needs increases. And I'm wondering kind of if that factored into your decision making. You mentioned doing testing. The phrase I'm always used to hearing is pre-implantation genetic. And
yeah, I'm sure that's using wrong terminology.
Or a couple cells of an embryo to determine whether or not they can identify any genetic abnormalities, right? What was your thinking around like the risk of special needs?
There was a lot of thinking around it. My nephew has autism and is very high on the spectrum, low functioning. He's an incredible little boy, but unfortunately, yes, he's special needs. And so it's in my world, it's in my life, and it was something that I'm absolutely concerned about, especially as a single mother. I've seen my brother and his wife struggle, and how hard it is to you know, to contend with all the things that come with a special needs child. And I have another, well, an acquaintance, a friend of my brother's, who also has a child with Down syndrome. And so I've seen like how much work it is. And it's not that I wouldn't love a child as much. It's just that as a single mother, I think it would be really complicated and even that much more difficult. And I know that there are women who do it. And I mean, I'm amazed by those women. And it's, you know, it's something that I wanted to kind of have the best, the most well-rounded picture of my embryos, I guess, to know like what kind of shape we were in.
Right. I just want to take a second to reintroduce you here since we have more people joining us. Good afternoon or good morning or good evening. My name is Joanna Pearlstein. I'm an editor at the New York Times opinion section, and I'm speaking here today with Alicia Lombardini. She lives in New York City, where she's a stylist. We should talk about that. And she wrote an essay for the New York Times opinion section about her experience doing IVF without a partner after 40. So actually just talking, you know, I think we came into this piece, and you mentioned this in this piece, that you have a little bit of a, not a Hollywood moment, but like there's the TV show Master of None in the 3rd season, there's a character that's essentially the inspiration. You're the inspiration behind this character. Can you tell us a little bit about that story. The character is obviously a little bit different from you,
Yeah.
but tell us a little bit about how that came to be.
Well, Aziz Ansari, who's in, came to me and said that he wanted to write a, you know, or bring in a character that had was going through IVF on their own. And at that point, I really had no idea what it would turn into, but so we just started talking. And so he would call me, I think at the time he was in London, and we would just speak for, an hour or so on the phone every so often. And I would just recount my story to him. And I think at that point I was about 7 months pregnant. So I hadn't given birth yet. And it was a little daunting at first because I was recalling all the hardship getting there. And when I think I'd probably pushed it all down, after you get pregnant, you're so thrilled. You don't really think about how hard it was to get there. And to revisit all that was really interesting for me, I think. And I started recalling all the different moments that some were funny, some were, heartbreaking. And I was able to recount them to Aziz, and he brought it to life in the 3rd season in such a wonderful way. It was really just so touching. Naomi Aki, who plays Alicia in the season, or in the whole season, and in episode 4, just did such an incredible job of portraying the emotions and the frustration and the heartache. And it was really nice to see it represented like that. It was really comforting in a way. I don't know. It's hard to explain, but it felt nice.
That's cool. I was wondering, the title of your piece is, I'm not going to get it exactly right, but is, I did IVF without a partner. It shouldn't have been so hard. And I wondered if you could talk a little bit about like what you would prescribe for either the fertility industry or countries that, as you referenced, France doesn't permit single women or LGBTQ people to pursue IVF. What would you change about, I don't know what it is, all of that, in order to make it easier? How should it be less hard for people?
Well, I think that, first of all, the medical system in the United States is completely backwards, but that's just my humble opinion. And I do think that there should be support for, single women. Why are single women and, LGBT community not given the same amount of, offered the same opportunities to start a family that heterosexual couples are? I just don't understand that. Are we really so backwards that we have such a small view of what a family entails these days, that a single mother or single woman or an LGBT couple can't raise a family just as well as a heterosexual couple? It doesn't make sense. It really doesn't. And I think that there should be some, better support system. I think that the number of times, even though it was clearly marked in my files, anytime I would go to the clinic or anything like that, there was still people that brought, oh, is your partner can come, or, it would always kind of be referenced, and all the paperwork, it's always like your partner or your husband, or, and it's just, it's fine. It just rolls off my back really, but it can be, you're constantly reminded that, oh, you're alone, you're doing this, that's not the right way to do it, this isn't right, and you get a lot of judgment. I mean, even from my own family, there was judgment. I mean, they came around, thank goodness, but, it's definitely not easy. I think that creating support networks, or just even talking about it more, I think allowing the conversation to be had, to normalize it, to allow women to not feel like they're washed up or some sort of like, I think there was a comment made in response to my essay of, a man who wrote that, I must be an extremely difficult person, or I'm the one that screwed up my relationships and I didn't deserve a child. And I was like, oh, okay, It's like, I mean,
Cool.
honestly, I don't care because that person obviously doesn't know me and is just spouting his own insecurities. But I do think that there needs to be more normalization around it, simply put.
So I feel like I want to reintroduce you, but and also say two other things because we're running out of time. But my name is Joanna Perlstein. I'm an editor at New York Times Opinion, talking today with Alicia Lombardini, the author of an essay for New York Times Opinion about what it's like to do IVF without a partner after 40. I feel like we haven't really acknowledged the thing that, like, the end of the rainbow moment here, which is that you have a child.
Yeah, no, he's pretty special. I think
Mhm.
somehow his personality, like something fortuitous came to be because he has the most incredible personality. He's just so happy and loving and just so cheerful and so curious. He's incredidible. I feel incredibly lucky to be his mother.
That's great. I'm wondering, as we sort of wrap up, I'm sure there are people who will watch this either now or later on. We will save this to the New York Times Opinion Instagram Live TV thing. Forgive me for getting that wrong. You know, a lot of people out there are in your same situation, right? They're in their 40s, they're single, they want to become a parent. Based on what you have learned through your experience, what kind of advice would you give them? What cautionary tales would you offer to them? Any do's and don'ts that you would share?
Yeah, I mean, I would say do your research really well. But most of all, I would say that people need to trust their own instincts and believe in themselves. I think that there's so many naysayers that we listen to that get us down. And even though the process is really hard, I think trying to stay positive and stay healthy, I know that sounds really simplified, but I think it's so important. I think staying really healthy in terms of how you eat and exercise, it keeps your mind healthy, it keeps your energy up, because it is really strenuous on your body to go through this. And in
Mm-hmm.
terms of, you know, people who are deciding whether to do it or not, if they're over 40 and they're scared, I mean, I was there. I was terrified. And it's the best thing I've ever done. I have zero regrets. My life has changed exponentially in terms of how much love I have to be able to offer this child, and I feel it in return every single moment.
That's great. I feel like that's a perfect moment to conclude, unless there's anything else you want to make sure that you mention for everybody.
No, this is my first time doing one of these, so I'm not sure.
That's great.
I hope it was
Um,
okay.
Well, I want to thank everyone again for joining us. The piece is available on New York Times Opinion. It's called I Did IVF Without a Partner. It shouldn't have been so hard. Or no, maybe it's called I Did IVF After. Yeah, that's what it's called. Okay, great. It's on New York Times Opinion. Again, we've been speaking with Alicia Lombardini about her essay. My name is Joanna Perlstein. I want to thank everyone for joining us, and we will be back with more programming on this channel very soon. And Alicia, one of our colleagues is saying congratulations, and I want to congratulate you on the birth of your son. I
Thank
know
you so much.
firsthand how wonderful that is, so
Yeah,
congratulations to you.
18 months today.
Oh my God, that's a
Yeah.
lot of activity at 18 months. Yeah, just don't get on an airplane if you can avoid it, because that is not fun with an 18-month-old at least. Anyway, well, thanks again, everyone, for joining us. Really appreciate it, and have a great afternoon.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Hello. Okay, it's over.